Hello and welcome to the Week 5 edition of the Monster Pod here on thelines.com. Matt Brown, Steven Anders. Joined this week, Ryan Noonan from 4 for 4. Over in London, New York Jets and the Minnesota Vikings. It is currently 2.5. There's one cheap 3 out there in favor of the Vikings. 40.5 is our total. We got Aaron Rodgers, just like acting like nothing's ever a big deal. Everything's always totally fine with him. We're all overreacting, even though the fact that they couldn't go out and score any points against the Broncos. I guess you could blame the weather if you want to, but how do you feel here about the Jets heading over to London against what might be the best team in the NFL in the Minnesota Vikings?
This is a unique one because we have a neutral field situation. We've seen some pretty massive line movement. We don't typically see this much, especially in this type of setting, just in reaction, I think, to week 4, which is, I think, pretty interesting for both of these clubs. Because this was the Jets minus 1.5 or so in look aheads. Now we're out to 2.5. We're like pushing 3. I think Caesars is out to, a plus money, even money 3. On the Viking side, which is pretty interesting. It's hard not to overreact. I mean, you think about kind of what happened last week to the Jets and how Denver approached that situation. They blitzed. They're the only team in the league that's blitzing at a higher rate than Minnesota. They're blitzing last week at almost 50% of Rodgers' dropbacks. They pressured him 14 times, which is a pretty significant rate, especially when you don't have like a dominant edge rusher per se or like anyone. It's just kind of like a system that Denver is kind of utilizing. Similar to Minnesota, they do have actually better individual players than I think even Denver can roll out. 14 pressures is a ton. He went down 5 times. And what does Minnesota like to do? They love to blitz. They love to pin their ears back and get after it. It's a tough spot. I think the tackles right now are struggling for the Jets as well. And Rodgers, his pressure to sack rate is, I look back at like 7-8 years. I could not find anything that really even is close to where he's at right now. 25% of his pressures are resulting in a sack. A little bit of that, like, hey, I'd rather just tuck in and protect myself than try to step up in the pocket and get hit in the face and kind of roll under. I think it's a problem here. So even though there's a lot of movement that's kind of unprecedented in a neutral field situation, I feel like 2.5 is probably the right side. I don't know. I don't have an appetite for it yet, but for me, it's probably the Vikings or nothing, even though it feels reactionary.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but it is tough for me to get there as well. You look on the injury report, Morgan Moses already out at right tackle, 2 straight DNPs for Tyron Smith as well in the left tackle position. CJ Mosley, a couple of limited practices out there as well. And then you get the Vikings injury report come through and it's basically clean. So you're getting a team at this point in the season where you just don't really see clean injury reports, and the Vikings somehow are running on the right side of variance from that standpoint. Steven, I took the bait, right? I played the Vikings at 2. I'm okay with it because if you look at my power ratings, I like the Vikings a significant amount better than I like the Jets, and we are on a neutral field, and so there is no home field advantage. I think that 2 is about right, in my opinion, between these two teams. There's something going on with the Jets on the offensive side of the ball, not being able to figure some things out. That being said, I did go back to the well as well. I've played Mike Williams over receiving yards every single week, and until they move it above 30 yards, I'm just going to continue to play Mike Williams over receiving yards until the cows come home here. He's getting more and more snaps, running more and more routes out there. And Aaron Rodgers, for all of his maybe shortcomings and faults that we've seen so far through 4 games, one thing he will do is he just throws to the open guy. He doesn't throw, he didn't force it in there to Garrett Wilson, which Garrett Wilson's all pissed off and everything about that. But that's where I'm at with this one. I think the Vikings are just a better team.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a good job hitting on the matchup. So I want to kind of hit more big picture here on what I believe with the look ahead line versus now. And there's a few games this week where we basically have to decide, do we still want to be anchored to a point a little bit in our priors on these teams, or have we reached the point now where we do need to make decisions on what's actually been shown to us on the field? And Matt, you've told me over and over again in the years we've done this show to not be too anchored on look-ahead lines because we get an extra data point. And there are times where I disagree with you on that. But in this case, where the look-ahead line was under 3 and went through 0, and now the expensive team is still under the key number of 3, I think that's less significant, right? It's more expensive, but it's still around 0 and under a key number of 3. So that's the first point I would make for those interested in backing the Vikings. As far as getting off priors and focusing on what we've actually seen on the field, it's warranted, right? The adjustment is warranted. The Vikings have been better everywhere. By EPA, the Vikings offense is 9th, the Jets is 15th. By success rate, Vikings 5th, Jets 16th. On defense, by EPA, the Vikings are 1st, the Jets are 8th. By success rate, the Vikings are 5th, and the Jets are 8th. Now, typically in a situation like this where we have a surprise team, Matt, the next question becomes, well, who have they played? The Vikings have played a much tougher schedule than the Jets have. The Jets maybe should have lost to the Titans. They did lose to the Broncos. That loss is inexcusable to me. They had extra rest for that game and still couldn't beat the Denver Broncos. Obviously, they looked pretty bad against the San Francisco 49ers, and they beat the Patriots. Who cares? Meanwhile, the Vikings, dispatched of the Niners, made the Texans look embarrassing, made the Packers look embarrassing for most of that game. They're up 28-0. So, yes, it's more expensive on the Vikings, but I don't know how you can disagree with the move here. And if I'm still under the key number of 3, Matt, I'm good with it. I did bet the Vikings this week.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that, you know, we talk about Aaron Rodgers, and Ryan, I think you brought up a good point where it's like he's almost gotten to that point where he's not quite the Brady self-sack stuff going on right now, but it's like he's not trying to do what Aaron Rodgers used to do in years past. And you got a team that blitzes at the second highest rate in the league. And by the way, it's getting home every time. They also have the second highest pressure rate. So it's like the blitz is working and the blitz is getting there every single time. I think Aaron Rodgers in for a hell of a day here in this one. So I like me some Vikings here in this one. All right, guys, everything you do absolutely free. Do appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know in the comment section. Steven will go in. He'll read them. Like what did we get right? What did we get wrong? Let us know. And of course, you want to continue the discussion. Upper right-hand corner of thelions.com is the Discord. You can go in there, chat football, every single sport, actually, all year around. If you've not checked out 4for4 yet, head over to 4for4. Go in. You can use it not only for your sports betting, you can use it for your fantasy sports and your DFS and everything like that. So be sure, 4for4.com. Thanks, Ryan, for being with us as well. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your Week 5 bets.